The alien's skull crunched sickeningly under Nolan's armored fist, gray matter splattering his visor as the trooper's momentum carried him forward into the next rank of horrified Kelvaki. Around him, his fellow Terrans, no longer mere humans, but something far deadlier, tore into the enemy with savage efficiency, their enhanced bodies moving in a brutal ballet of destruction. Just weeks ago, Nolan had been a simple soldier, defending his small colony on Zephyrus from the petty squabbles of distant empires. Then the Ladosians came, crushing the outpost and dragging Nolan and a handful of survivors back to their labs as prisoners. There, under the cruel tutelage of Fenris, a hulking alien warrior, they were reforged into weapons. Subjected to brutal surgeries, punishing training, and relentless mental conditioning, they emerged as something new, Terran shock troopers, imbued with terrifying strength and speed, their human tenacity and cunning now heightened to a lethal edge. As whispered tales of the Ladosians' secret weapons spread, the Terrans learned a grim truth. Their homeworld, their very species, faced annihilation if their captors fell. In that moment, Nolan saw their path forward with crystalline clarity. They would fight for the Ladosians, but not as mere weaponized slaves. They were humans, the Terrans, and they would be allies and equals, not pawns. Now as the Terrans carved a path of ruin through the heart of the Kelvaki lines, Nolan felt a savage joy rising in his chest. Today the galaxy would learn the price of threatening humanity, and watching their creations scythe through their foes like demonic harvesters. Perhaps the Ladosians would begin to wonder if they'd birth salvation or damnation. The dropship shuddered as it knifed through Helios's atmosphere, the planet's surface rushing up to meet them like an eager combatant. Nolan braced against the bulkhead, his eyes flicking over the grim faces of his fellow Terrans. Beside him, Jax Brogan, a mountain of a man even before their transformation, checked the charge on his plasma rifle, his eyes glinting with anticipation. 30 seconds, the pilot barked over the comm. Prepare for hot drop. The Ladosian regulars in the hold shifted uneasily, their sideways glances at the Terrans a mix of awe and unease. Commander Varo Zex, his craggy face a map of old battles, regarded Nolan coolly. I hope you're as good as they say, human. We've been banging our heads against the Kelvaki lines for months. It's time to break this stalemate. Nolan met his gaze unflinchingly. We'll get it done, Commander. That's a promise. The dropship lurched as it hit the ground, the ramp slamming down to reveal a hellscape of churned earth and twisted metal. Nolan was moving before the dust settled, his team fanning out behind him like lethal shadows. They drilled this 100 times in the sims, honed their skills to a razor's edge. Now it was time to put them to the test. The Kelvaki forces, entrenched and battle-hardened, met their charge with a hail of fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, but the Terrans moved with preternatural speed, their enhanced reflexes guiding them through the maelstrom unscathed. Nolan vaulted a shattered wall, his rifle already spitting death as he landed among a knot of startled Kelvaki. They fell in pieces, their cries lost in the din of battle. Beside him, Jax waded into the fray like a force of nature, his massive fists crushing armor and bone with equal ease. Across the battlefield, the Ladosian regulars watched in stunned disbelief as the Terrans tore through the enemy lines like demons of war. In minutes, positions that had stymied them for weeks were overrun, the Kelvaki falling back in disarray. Commander Zex, his face a mix of grudging respect and calculation, barked orders to his troops to press the advantage. The battle was just getting started, but for the first time in months, victory seemed within grasp. As the fighting raged on, Nolan lost himself in the brutal simplicity of combat. His world narrowed to the next target, the next objective, the next threat to neutralize. But even as he carved a path of destruction through the Kelvaki forces, a part of him remained coldly analytical, evaluating their performance, probing for weaknesses. They were a weapon, he knew, a tool forged for war. But a weapon could be turned against its wielder, and Nolan would be damned if he let that happen to his Terrans. They fought for the Ladosians now, but their true loyalty, their true purpose, was to each other and to the future of their species. As the battle wound down, the Kelvaki in full retreat, Nolan surveyed the carnage with grim satisfaction. They had won the day, broken the stalemate, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Terrans had proven their worth, but in doing so, they had painted a target on their backs. As he met Jax's eyes across the smoke-shrouded battlefield, Nolan saw his own realization mirrored there. They were in the game now, players on a galactic chessboard where the stakes were the fate of worlds. And the Terrans, forged in the flames of war and tempered by the bonds of brotherhood, would be no one's pawns. They would fight, they would bleed, and if necessary, they would die. But they would do so on their own terms, for their own cause. The galaxy would learn, as the Kelvaki had today, the price of underestimating humanity. For the Terrans had been unleashed, and the stars themselves would tremble before their might. The acrid stench of ozone and charred flesh hung heavy in the air as Nolan surveyed the aftermath of their latest victory. The Terrans had carved a swath of destruction through the Kelvaki lines, leaving broken bodies and shattered defenses in their wake. But even as he tallied their gains, a nagging unease gnawed at the back of his mind. Their success had not gone unnoticed. As the weeks stretched into months, whispers of the Terrans' exploits spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Nolan could see it in the wary eyes of their Ladosian allies, hear it in the hushed conversations that fell silent when he approached. The dropship's comm crackled to life, interrupting his brooding. "Cooper, report to command immediately." Nolan's heart made. He'd been expecting this summons. The Ladosian command center buzzed with activity as Nolan strode in, his enhanced senses picking up the undercurrent of tension beneath the ordered chaos. At the far end of the room stood Admiral Zara Valen, her scaled skin glinting under the harsh lights as she studied a holographic battle map. "Impressive work out there, Cooper," she said without looking up. "Your Terrans continue to exceed expectations." Nolan said nothing, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Valen's gaze finally met his, her alien eyes unreadable. "Which is why High Command has decided to reassign your unit." "Reassign?" Nolan's voice was dangerously calm. "You've become too valuable an asset to risk in a single theater," Valen explained, her tone carefully neutral. "We'll be dispersing the Terrans across multiple fronts, maximizing your impact on the war effort." The words hung in the air between them, their true meaning crystal clear. The Ladosians feared them, sought to dilute their power by scattering them to the winds. Nolan's enhanced mind raced, calculating possibilities, weighing options. In that moment, he saw their future with stark clarity, pawns to be used and discarded, their humanity a threat to be contained. "No," he said simply. Valen's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a request, Cooper. It's an order." Nolan's hands shot out, faster than any unaugmented eye could track. In an instant, he had Valen pinned against the wall, his armored forearm pressed against her throat. "We're not your slaves," he growled, "and we're done taking orders." Alarms blared as Nolan sprinted through the corridors, his comm unit alive with the voices of his fellow Terrans. They'd been prepared for this, had planned for the day when they'd need to break free. Plasma bolts sizzled past him as he rounded a corner, coming face to face with a squad of Ladosian security forces. Nolan didn't slow, his augmented body carrying him into their midst like a force of nature. Bones snapped and armor crumpled under his onslaught. "Hangar secured," Jax's voice crackled over the comm. "Let's blow this popsicle stand." Nolan allowed himself a grim smile as he sprinted towards freedom. The Terrans were done being anyone's weapon but their own. The stolen Ladosian cruiser shuddered as it punched through the planet's atmosphere, alarms wailing as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the unorthodox launch. In the cockpit, Dr. Lila Soren's fingers danced across the controls, her brilliant mind adapting to the alien technology with preternatural speed. "We're clear," she announced, her voice tight with concentration. "Setting course for the outer rim." Nolan nodded, his eyes fixed on the swirling void of space beyond the view screen. They were rogues now, hunted by both sides of a war they'd never asked to join. But they were free, and they had a purpose. "All right, Terrans," he said, turning to face his comrades. "Time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do." The cruiser's engines flared, propelling them towards an uncertain future, and the promise of greater battles to come. The stolen Ladosian cruiser drifted through the inky void of deep space, its systems humming quietly as it followed the course Dr. Lila Soren had plotted. Nolan stood on the bridge, his enhanced eyes scanning the unfamiliar star charts displayed before him. "We're approaching the coordinates," Lila announced, her fingers dancing across the alien controls. "Sensors are picking up something. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a barren, rocky planetoid orbiting a dying star. But it was what lay on its surface that made Nolan's breath catch in his throat. A massive structure of impossible geometry rose from the scarred landscape, its dark metal gleaming dully in the weak starlight. "Take us in," Nolan ordered, his voice tight with anticipation. "And stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The cruiser touched down on a flat expanse of rock near the alien facility. Nolan led the first team out, his armor's sensors struggling to make sense of the readings from the structure. The air was thin but breathable, carrying the musty scent of ages long past. As they approached the entrance, a massive door groaned open, releasing a gust of stale air. Nolan's enhanced hearing picked up the faint whisper of machinery coming to life after millennia of slumber. "Jax, take point," Nolan commanded. The big man nodded, hefting his plasma rifle as he stepped into the shadowy interior. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and turning in ways that defied conventional geometry. Strange glyphs adorned the walls, pulsing with a faint, eerie light. Lila ran her scanner over them, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These symbols, they're not just decorative," she murmured. "They're data storage. Billions of years of history, compressed into light and energy." Suddenly, the floor beneath them shuddered. Nolan's combat instincts kicked in as he shouted, "Defensive positions!" A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, resolving into the image of a being unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Its form was constantly shifting, a swirl of light and shadow that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "Vorkal," Lila breathed, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. The image spoke, its voice resonating not through the air but directly in their minds. It spoke of an ancient war, of power beyond imagining, and of a darkness that consumed all it touched, the Tenebrous. As the hologram faded, Nolan's team found themselves standing in a vast chamber. At its center stood a towering obelisk, crackling with dark energy, and before it, encased in a shimmering stasis field, floated a being that could only be a Vorkal Archon. "My God," Jax whispered, his usual bravado shaken. "What have we stumbled into?" Before Nolan could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The stasis field around the Archon flickered ominously. "The seal is weakening," Lila shouted over the din. "Our presence, our conflict, it's feeding it somehow." Nolan's mind raced, processing the implications. Their very existence as enhanced warriors, the product of endless war, was awakening an ancient evil that threatened to consume the galaxy. "We need to get out of here," he growled, "and we need to find a way to stop this." As they sprinted back to their ship, Nolan's comm crackled to life. A Ladosian transmission, intercepted by their stolen cruiser's systems. Commander Varozex's voice, terse and urgent. "All units be advised. Rogue Terran forces have breached Facility Omega. Prototype weaponry has been compromised. Threat level, maximum. Engage with extreme prejudice." Nolan's eyebrows furrowed. Their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. They needed allies, resources, a plan to combat the Tenebrous. But first, they needed to survive. "Set course for the Ladosian research outpost in the Cygnus sector," he ordered as they lifted off. "We're going to need every advantage we can get." The cruiser's engines flared, propelling them towards an uncertain future and a battle that would determine the destiny of the universe itself. The Ladosian research outpost loomed before them, a sprawling complex of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. Nolan's stolen cruiser docked with a hiss of hydraulics, and he led his team into the facility's cavernous main bay. They were met by a contingent of armed Ladosian guards, plasma rifles trained on the Terrans. At their center stood a familiar face, Commander Varo Zex. "I should have you all executed where you stand," Zex growled, his scales rippling with nearly unleashed fury. Nolan stepped forward, hands raised. "We don't have time for this, Zex. Something's coming, something that makes our war look like a playground scuffle." He locked eyes with the Ladosian commander, willing him to see the truth. "We need to work together, all of us." For a long moment, tension crackled in the air. Then, with a sharp gesture, Zex ordered his troops to stand down. "Explain," he demanded. As Nolan recounted their discovery of the Vorkal facility and the awakening Tenebris, a palpable sense of dread settled over the assembled Ladosians. Even Zex's hostility gave way to grim understanding. "If what you say is true," the commander said slowly, "we'll need more than just Ladosian might to face this threat." He tapped a comm unit on his wrist. "Contact the Kelvaki High Command. Tell them we have a proposal." Days turned to weeks as an uneasy alliance took shape. Ladosian and Kelvaki ships docked side by side, their crews eyeing each other warily as they worked to pool resources and knowledge. In the heart of the research outpost, Lila Soren stood before a holographic display, her eyes feverishly scanning streams of data. Kelvaki and Ladosian scientists huddled around her, their animosity momentarily forgotten in the face of the challenge before them. "The Tenebris feeds on conflict," Lila explained, manipulating the hologram to show a pulsing mass of dark energy. "Our wars, our hatred, it's all fuel for this thing." A Kelvaki scientist, his feathered crest filled with agitation, spoke up. "Then how do we fight it without making it stronger?" Lila's fingers danced across the controls, bringing up schematics of Vorkal technology. "We use their own weapons against them. A focused beam of tachyon particles, calibrated to the exact frequency of the Tenebris energy signature." As the scientists debated the finer points of the plan, Nolan found himself on the outpost's observation deck. The vast expanse of space stretched out before him, peppered with the hulls of Ladosian and Kelvaki ships. Jax appeared at his side, his usually boisterous demeanor subdued. "Never thought I'd see the day," he muttered, nodding towards the mixed fleet. Nolan grunted in agreement. "Let's hope it's enough." A sudden commotion from the nearby barracks caught their attention. They arrived to find a Ladosian soldier pinned against the wall by a snarling Kelvaki warrior. "I saw you sabotaging our ship," the Kelvaki roared. "You snakes can't be trusted." The Ladosian's scales flushed with indignation. "I was repairing a power coupling, you feathered fool!" Nolan stepped between them, forcibly separating the two. "Enough," he barked. "This is exactly what the Tenebris wants. We fight each other. It grows stronger." As he spoke, a chill ran down his spine. For a moment he could have sworn he heard whispers, just at the edge of hearing. Malevolent voices, urging conflict, promising power. He shook his head, trying to clear it. But looking around, he saw the same unease reflected in the eyes of those around him. The Tenebris was already here, worming its way into their minds. Nolan's comm unit chirped, Lila's voice tinged with urgency. "Nolan, we've got a problem. The countermeasure, it's not enough. We need to draw the Tenebris out, concentrate its essence in one place." His mind raced, weighing options, calculating risks. Then, with grim perseverance, he spoke. "I have a plan, but you're not going to like it."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.